All right, YouTube and Auburn fans out there, once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. Talking Auburn football, go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. We're going to talk a little bit about this Auburn recruiting class. And before we get into it, there was a lot of crazy things that happened with just recruiting in general. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. One of the more amazing and / feel-good stories was Jackson State. What is considered a historically black college and university, typically they don't get 5-star recruits. They don't get recruits in that kind of manner. However, when you look at it, it's almost impossible from the grand scheme of things for this to happen. Deion Sanders, who is a former Florida State Seminole, also had a very storied career in the NFL. They call him Prime Time. Now they call him Coach Prime. He was actually able to flip the number one recruit in the country from Florida State to Jackson State. And it's kind of caused a bit of an uproar. And it's kind of caused a lot of negative reaction, positive reaction, depending on what end of the spectrum that you're on. But congratulations to Jackson State in acquiring this young man as he plans to continue his college career at Jackson State University. So let's get into my 5 takeaways from this Auburn recruiting class as it sits right now. I wanted to wait to do this video today because I wanted the whole process to go through and all of the guys that were actually going to commit to go ahead and commit, and we see where we sit at this point. Number 5, this is the number 5 takeaway that I have from this recruiting class is Caden Story. We all remember Caden Story, who was a defensive lineman out of Lynette, Alabama, right down the road from Auburn. He made his commitment in August, but he was one of the guys that did not sign the letter of intent on the early signing period. A lot of folks speculated, well, maybe he's trying to weigh out his options. Maybe there's some things that came up academically as to why he didn't do as such. But as of now, Caden Story, defensive lineman who was actually at one point of this recruiting cycle the number one recruit in Auburn's class, did not sign. We don't know as of yet what kind of news this is going to turn out to be. We don't know what other schools that he might be looking at, or maybe he just wants to delay his recruiting just to make sure that he's making the right decision. But as of now, Caden Story is not signed with Auburn. He hasn't flipped his commitment, his hard commitment yet. But right now, he is not an Auburn Tiger. Now, when you look at this, I think this is something that Auburn needs to look at real closely. Auburn will lose T.D. Moultrie, which is going to be a huge loss. Auburn will lose Tony Fair, but Auburn still has Lee Hunter. Auburn still has Dylan Brooks. So we're going to look at how this depth thing turns out for Auburn at the defensive line position. Number 4, this actually could have been a little bit more up the list. But number 4, Auburn is absolutely loading up in the secondary. In this recruiting class, you have Jadarian Rhyme. You have Austin Alsbury, who actually, a lot of folks were trending him towards LSU. And you could kind of sort of say that this may be a flip, maybe not from LSU. But Austin Alsbury, one of a very elite cornerback out of Louisiana, chooses Auburn, which I think is a big deal because Auburn is losing a lot in the secondary. You're losing Ladarius Tennyson to Ole Miss. You're losing Smoke Monday to the prospect of the NFL draft. And, you're losing Roger McCreary. So this is going to be, this secondary pickup for Auburn is really going to be key considering all that's being lost. Also, you have Trey Donaldson, who is out of Florida. You also have Kelontae Scott, who is the number 1 JUCO cornerback in this recruiting class. Marquise Gilbert also in this class. And I think, here's what I think. You know, you got Kobe Wooten's brother, Caleb Wooten, who is a 3-star recruit, 86%. Auburn actually digs into the Gwinnett County pot again. I think he's the most underrated secondary guy in this class. I think he's going to prove to be a very viable addition to this secondary. I think this is a big pickup for the Auburn Tigers. Very underrated. Number 3, this actually could have been number 1, but number 3, with at least 3 years, for the last 3 years, going back to the 2019 season, the Auburn offensive line has been a course of concern. When you look at the lack of offensive production in a lot of areas, Auburn's offensive line has been on that list. I think this is a combination of quarterback play, which could coincide with the offensive line. Also, the lack of elitism at the wide receiver position could contribute. But the offensive line seems to be in most talking points, no matter who's talking about Auburn football, seem to be the talking point of the abysmal play of the offense. The problem with this is, in this class, Auburn has only picked up 1 offensive lineman. In addition to, you caveat that with all the offensive linemen that are leaving. You talk about Austin Troxell, Nick Brahms, Brendan Coffey. He might have another year left with the COVID, the 1-year extension for COVID eligibility. But Auburn has some real problems, in my opinion, on the offensive line, and only having 1 offensive lineman in this class is really, really questionable for the Auburn Tigers. And actually losing Mike Bobo's son, to Georgia, I think, that could have kind of solidified some things, had some things looking forward to the future, but it just didn't happen. We're going to see, though, what Bryan Harsin is able to do in this period between now and National Signing Day, which is in February. We're going to see what Bryan Harsin is able to do as far as acquiring. I think you need about 2 more, at least. You need about 2 more offensive linemen in this particular class to be able to see some light at the end of the tunnel for the future at the offensive line position for Auburn. Number 2, this was huge for Auburn. Huge for Auburn. I can't remember the last time Auburn actually had a flip, a significant flip, might I add, from Alabama. Turns out the best rated player in this Auburn recruiting cycle so far is Robert Woodyard out of Mobile, Alabama. He's a very versatile linebacker. I think he has the capability to have some level of immediate impact, whether it be adding some depth or maybe doing the Owen Papo thing and actually getting a starting position coming into the 2022 season. This is a huge gain, not only from a personnel standpoint, but really from a perception standpoint. Because Paul Feinbaum said, look, Bryan Harsin is in over his head. He can't recruit in the SEC. But this type of situation right here proves that Bryan Harsin has the potential long-term to recruit in the SEC. He flipped a guy from Alabama, flipped some guys from some other schools. So I think this is a real big thing for Bryan Harsin and his staff, just if nothing else, just from a perception standpoint, to be able to flip a recruit like this. And last but not least, the number 1 take from this recruiting class is this. Auburn acquires a really good quarterback out of the state of Georgia, a Holden Geriner. 70% of why this is significant is the fact that Post-Nix is transferring. Let's just put that out there. I think, yes, having Holden is great. But the fact that Bo Nix is now no longer in the quarterback rotation, I think you have the opportunity to have a genuine quarterback battle this spring. I think you do. I think you get out of the situation where, okay, we let's be honest. Let's be honest about this for a change. The Bo Nix quarterback battles are always going to have the common denominator of the fact that Patrick Nix is his father. And if he gets the starting position, you know, granted the inconsistencies that he's had over the years is always going to be said in the back of the Auburn fans' minds, or even directly, that the only reason why Bo Nix is a starter is because he's his dad. Now, I don't see where Patrick Nix had all that much pull, because if I remember, Patrick Nix wasn't sitting in the box suites. Patrick Nix was sitting in the stands with all the other parents. So it wasn't like he was getting all this special treatment as a parent in comparison to the other parents that were out there. So I don't really buy that argument. I think by chance, when we look at all the evidence involved, Joey Gatewood, TJ Finley, I think Bo Nix probably was your best quarterback. I think he was. I think he was your best quarterback given the situation. Was he a great quarterback? I'd venture to say maybe, maybe not. Probably not when you talk about consistency. But now you have the opportunity to have a genuine quarterback race, and this is a situation that will not divide the Auburn fan base like it did in the past. And I think it will eliminate all that distraction at the quarterback position. Okay, so let me know what you think about this video. If you like my content, go ahead and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. Also, you can leave a Cash App, $ Kennard Stewart on Cash App. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.